Hello and welcome to another Random Code stream. In this stream, I am going to be continuing the work on this feature. I never liked that GitHub called these issues in general and then just said, because issue always seems to be like there's something wrong. There's an issue with this. But I get it. It's also just, yeah, there is an issue here. And it might be that the issue is a feature request. It might be that the issue is a bug. Anyway, I digress. Let me get my music going here. So at this point, what we're going to do is look at defaults. This is something that I thought was going to derail things a little bit just because I forgot exactly why this was being done. But then I looked at it and I said, okay, it should be something we should be able to do. So what I thought is, let's just generate, code as it stands right now, see how broken it is to get it in the state that it should be, or just to see what it does. So I wrote down some tests that already are doing this thing with optional arguments. And we're just going to run these and we're going to see what they do. Failed as it should. And we probably can just go right down to the, yep. Grab that snapshot of code. Okay, so what is this doing? So we have a method foo, and then we do the transforms on them like we should. And then we generate the second one here. As a side note, I want to put in between the two gen methods for optional arguments. Okay, so it looks like it did the right thing, I think. Because it did the string B, it did this. It turns around on this, it will call foo args is B, rocks args is C, and that's what it does before. And then does this transform thing here. For a second, I looked at the code that I'm generating going, what in the world is this? It's a collection expression. It just took me a second to realize what it was. That passes. Okay, well, let's take a look at another one. And again, we got to do the little song and dance thing here. So let's grab the code, and we know it's going to be... Oh, for God's sakes. Okay. Wait. Yeah, I didn't. Okay. So again, values would just be values. That would be the same as it did before. And that passes. Okay, good. Let's do these. We're going to do all 4 of these that I found, just to get a feel for where things might have been broken. No, not that. This. Okay. And that passes. Okay, so all those pass. Let's see. This I have 1 for indexers. So, and then I think these might have, yeah, some that we want to run. But let's go back to this one. Looks like it's doing the right thing. Oops. Oops, oops, oops. What happened? Lots of things, lots of stuff. Let's take a look at the errors. $45. So this is 71327. Oh shoot. Okay. Yeah, okay, so this does change. Makes sense why it broke, because with the change that I made, basically we would capture, or we're getting the values currently on this method that's being generated, and that would be done here twice. And then there's a getter's expectations and a setter's expectations, or an initializer expectations, I don't remember. But the point is, what we need to do is move this second one as a constructor. And the gets will just do this because this turns around. Yeah. Okay, so there's going to be some work here. Let's just make a note here that that failed. And then let's mark these. I do want to take a look at it real quick so we can close this off in default values. Okay, those just turn around and do what they're supposed to do. Because we have two. I just want to grab that. Okay. The test is generating explicit implementation has default values. Which it's not an explicit implementation. So I'm a little confused as to... Okay, well that passed anyway. Sure, let's do a generic one. Why not? Gotta change the test first. That passes. With positive infinity. That's when you're beyond sure that what you just did works. Positive infinity. No. Damn it. Okay. So this is good. We did get one failure, but it makes sense as to why it failed. So, and the reason why it fails is because of the way that we're changing how we're capturing the arguments to a method, or specifically an indexer. We used to capture them when we'd say, I'm setting up an expectation on this, and then we generate the method here. We no longer do that. We just say gets, and that never takes any arguments anymore. So what we need to do is change it for the indexer such that what it's doing here is actually now a constructor, and it needs to turn around and call this passing in these values. And if it generates it here, so what? That doesn't matter. But the problem is that we needed to, because I took out the logic apparently to put the parameters here, and now I have to figure out how to undo that. Okay, so let's get into it. So here, put a line there. We just need the name of the class that we just did. So I think what we need to do here is we need that. Because then here we can say this. We need a 2-2 here. We got to get and then we can just turn around and say this. Where are these being used? Huh. I believe we might be able to do that. Because we're doing the right thing in the gets. We're doing the transform like we should be doing. Oh, crap. Okay. No, not here. Shoot. Okay, we can't do it here. That's not... We need to do it here when we're generating the this. And it has to be outside of this expectations type. Yeah, because this is where we're generating the this. What we could do is return, yeah, because then we wouldn't need expectation source in here. Is just to say and it doesn't it doesn't matter if it's the getter or the setter. Because the sets code here, oh, we don't have that in this example. It's just a getter. No, we do sets. The sets is what captures the value. So we just need to detect if so when we build the getter implementation, no, that was turning up the volume. At some point, we determine because we come down here and we say build getter. So build getter is called. This is an actual it's a local method, so we pass in false here. Oh, that's where we determine. Because, yeah. So the second time we come through, we realize we need to generate defaults. That's where really all we need to do is pass back the instance parameters. To say these are the things, but it has that special, they're not using the arguments, they're actually the real things. And we don't care for whether it's a get and or a set or init. Just if we caught it once. I would hate to run this code again if we already did it. Because again, all we need is this thing to come out. So if it's generated with defaults, we need to do this. We need to at least get we need to get the instance parameters and the parameter values. So we need to basically, these are the arguments. These are the these are the parameters for the constructor. These are the parameters that get called to the this. So actually we need to return okay. We don't want to return right away because we need to actually do this the second time. But actually, now that I look at this, we could, right? Because this will call it first. If it doesn't get into is generated with defaults, it won't do this. It'll come into here. See, we're not returning something from this right now. I'm just trying to figure out, how do I get these values out? So we could say here, okay, and then down here, what we're going to say is return instance parameters, parameter values. And then we don't do this. Now, we'll say return here, because that's going to call it with the true. That will make that call that. Otherwise, we're going to say return null. And then we say here return. And so we do the same thing on the setter. Now we don't need to do that crap. This we don't need to do. We need to put the value parameter first. No, we don't. If we come back up here, let's go to the getter. We do want to skip the value though, but we don't include it. We just basically, you guys probably get methods, parameter select, you just get those. Here we're saying if you had 3, what you're doing is you're actually taking 2, because you do need, we need to skip. So basically we get rid of this outer join. And then, so now it should look pretty much like what we did above. Yeah. And then we say here, return. Okay. Come on, grab it. There you go. Okay. So here we'll say return whatever this is. Here we'll say return null. And here we'll say return. So now we can say string can we alias something here using constructor values is equal to, yeah, and then we alias to that. Nice. It's much better. Okay, because then we can say here, constructor values. Yes, so now we will do this. And again, it doesn't matter if in these cases crap. That alias works fine until I realize that I gotta actually escape it back out to the caller, because the caller needs it. Let's create a record. Indexer constructor default values. And so what does it have here? A string. And then we take this away. And so then we say here, indexer. Okay, and then this has to change to new. And then that's null, and that's fine. These also change. Did I do that right? Yes, I did. Okay. New. And then here, and we also return that out of here now. Return constructor values. Okay. So now who calls this? There should be one caller here. Var constructor values is equal to this. If constructor values is not null, we want to write this again, except without the okay, so now in this case what we want to do is we want to take the constructor. We don't need to do a join. We can just say here, constructor values, constructor parameters. And then we have to pass in the expectation source, but again, we don't need to do this. Well, constructor values argument, this parameters. Okay, now what happens? We know this is going to change, so we might as well. I'm going to bed early, so miss the stream live. That's fine. Don't worry, Mitch. I am working on the default argument thingy that I was concerned about. I think it's basically working, except there's a case with indexers that I just needed to shuffle things around. So we'll see if this I've been working on for the last 20 minutes will finally address it. We'll see. Okay, so we generate our indexer expectations. We have a constructor where we just simply capture the values, and then here we need to do the transform because we might have a default case. And we have just gets and sets. I think that did it. Except it didn't. Okay. So we missed one case. One, we have too much space. So we want to take care of that. what we need is to not put the value in here. So you can close that off. So we do have a get in sets. I believe it's because the sets is screwing it up. So it's the instance parameters. Where is this being used? It's just on the return. So we need to change this too. We don't need... We just need to do that. Again, we need to skip... we need to take all those sans the last one is what we need to do. You're on a streak with streams. I think you've been like 7 days straight. Yeah, I wanted to keep this in my head. Because otherwise... So I think what I just did, that should now take this out. Now it may fail because of spacing issues. Yeah, screw it. Let's just regenerate it. I don't want to mess with... Yeah, I've been going pretty hard on this one just because, like I said, there's so much nuance and context to this that I didn't want it to go for like 5 days because I'd come back and be like, what the hell am I doing? You know? So... Not complaining, the progress is great. Yeah, I'm starting to feel like... Let's see quick what this does. Now I'm starting to feel like the light at the end of the tunnel is hopefully not a train. Nice. So... Again, to summarize what I did is the indexers, like the properties, we generate an expectations, not an expectations type, but a type that will hold the expectations for an indexer. So when you create it, it captures the expectations that has everything and also the argument types. And then we say either gets or sets. And then down here, because these have defaults, we're now generating we're generating an instance of these gets and sets this expectations type using this syntax, the indexer syntax, except now we have two of them because we need it because this one has an optional value. And then these just get passed in here, but because we know we have an optional value, we have to transform them, which is what we're doing already, like in the other tests. So that sounds like a whole bunch of gobbledygook, but that means that the current tests that I have, oh yeah, I basically did that. The current tests that I have around defaults all work. Done and dusted. Should be consistent here. I always put on every one of my bullet points a done. There. Nice. So we can say git commit 394. Defaults are now handled correctly. So it generally worked. We just had to do one quick-ish, one thing with the indexers to reshuffle things around so that it actually does the right thing now. Nice. Yeah, it's very nice. There's still a lot of work ahead. So what I want to do in the remaining time that I have in this stream, it's lower on the list, but I'm going to run some code gen tests. I just want to see and get a feel for, if I go to code generation tests, we can now clear that out. We can go to program here and we can get rid of this and get rid of the using here. And we say we want to test with types, but we're only going to test with a handful. Let's just test with the system types and let's see what happens. How much breaks that I did not anticipate. Do I get a C or red? No, I don't. Okay. Now again, that doesn't mean the code's correct. What it does mean though is that at least it all compiled. We found 425 types that we could generate mocks for, and that didn't fail. So that's a little encouraging. Let's amp up the volume just a little bit and put some more in here. Because my mindset is something has to break in this, something that I'm missing that I haven't covered yet with the cases that I'm thinking about. Something has to break. Does the sea of red show up? Yep. Yep, we got a sea of... Well, it's not too bad. So we have one case here. Or an autofac, it hit this where it thinks it's generating more than one instance method. Why is that? It's only 6 though, and this is what I mean by sea or red. If the compilation in this test project I have, if it has errors, I capture them and then I throw them in at the ends in red. Sorry if you're colorblind. I apologize. But then it shows up in this sea of red color. So we found 3,682 types and only one of them is causing an error. So that's, given all the changes I just made, I guess that's not too bad. But obviously we need to fix this. So let's see. So it's autofac core. How do you pick the packages for the coach? Random. It's really random. Part of it was, yeah, it's high start packages or they have a lot of downloads on NuGet. Some of them are just ones that I somehow randomly heard of and I just threw in there. There's, for example, language extensions. This, as I affectionately call it, this is the library where it looks like F# threw up on C#. So it puts in a whole bunch of functional extensions to your code. So you can end up writing C# so it sort of looks like F#. I mean, that's That's the way I say it. I heard about this and I just, decided to throw it in. It's this test prod, this console app that I have that I wrote. All I have to do is reference a NuGet package, put in one of the types here, and off it goes. And so this one actually found a whole bunch of weird oddities that have to do with generics and constraints and stuff that I never even anticipated. So, but yeah, I just throw those in here. And if I find something, even if they don't generate any types, that in and of itself is a fine test. I'll still keep it in. So yeah, that's basically how I pick them. No real rhyme or reason. Okay, I do need to get back to my job real soon. Let's at least see if we can figure out why this one case isn't working right. So we can do that by saying test with type. And so then in here, we basically say that. Except I think it said it took args. There we go. Okay, so let's run this again. This should just do... Yeah, and the reason it's 2 is because what happens is basically 3 get generated before. It runs it 3 times. This time it just shows it for 1, I guess. So no big deal, but all of them with the same error. So what we need to do now is go into the test generator and run this under the debugger so I can capture the mock code. Copy value, stop, mock code dump. And then this gets always a little screwed up. I don't know why. And then I think, yeah, we end up with a... Now some of these are also like, you don't need this. Names of members and... Oh, okay. Does... Wait, let's get to the mock type. I think I just realized what the problem might be. Yeah. Variety is great. Yeah. And if anybody ever has a suggestion on another one, that's fine. So I think we just hit a case that is a naming issue. So use expression body for property. What the hell do you think that is? Oh, okay. Yeah, that's a minor thing. I mean, it works either way. It's just a little tweak, but we could do that. We could say use expression bodies for... Let me capture that down here. Use expression bodies for the getters. For example, instead of this, I'll just grab this whole thing. We generate this. Whoops, we need the... I think that's what it's saying, right? No, I don't want to. We say service. Do this. Yeah. Okay. Not a big deal. And that's not what the problem is anyway. But the problem is context, component, parameters, instance. So this is showing, if I get down to here, the reason it's colliding is because here, we already have a property named instance. So if we need to generate the instance methods here, we need to use a context to basically put all the names of all the members on the mock type that we can generate, and then say, well, here this would have to be 2. And see, now the error goes away. It's not pretty. I totally get this is not pretty, but we have to do something to disambiguate. This is the one problem with reducing all this expectation stuff down to the expectation type itself. Because things that I generate on the expectation type can't collide with what I'm putting on it. Theoretically, it could also be a name collision for gets and sets too. No. Those won't, because those are on their own types. Like on the service property expectations, it defines its own gets. There will never be a gets or sets. That's not what's on here. This is just the method that ties you from the expectations to start doing the adornments, which are the expected call counts, callbacks, and things like that. So those won't. Those will never collide. But if, for example, even these, the expectation classes that I create for properties and indexers and also explicit implementations, those all need to be using this naming context to say, if I came up with something, if something exists that's going to show up on here, because now we're deriving properties that aren't the same property definitions that are on the mock, but they have the same names. So if you have methods, properties, and stuff like that, they're going to show up here. So we can't collide with those. So I get why this error is happening, and it makes sense. And this is something that we do need to address. So need to create a naming context that contains all of the names, unique names, hash set. You just use a hash set of member of mockable member, and use that when we generate names for property expectations, indexer expectations, expectations, explicit explicit implementation, instance methods on the expectations type. There. And yes, I should have tests on these two. And you could say, well, wait a minute, Jason, why did you say these names? Well, somebody could, highly unlikely, but the highly unlikely is the thing that shows up, right? Highly unlikely that somebody's going to have something called service property expectations on their mock type. What they would need to do to have the case that I'm considering is they would need to have two properties. They need to have something called service and something called service property expectations. Because we would see service and we would go, oh, we need to generate the property expectations class for that. But then this would collide with service property expectations that needs to create service property expectations, property expectations. And it's wordy, but that's what happens. So we do need to be conscious of that. And I knew that, I just didn't get around to it. So that's something that we do need to fix. Now, also, handler, verify. What happens if there's a verify method? See, this is the one thing, Mitch, I was a little worried about, is by moving all this stuff, file scoped class. What would be a file scoped class? The caller needs to see this because it's being returned by this service property. So they need to be able to see this. But yeah, if you have handler, what happens if the name of the field would collide? What happens if verify would collide? That wouldn't be that uncommon. What happens if the name of the mock type collides? Lots of things. Lots of things. This name could even technically collide. Well, actually, no, because it derives from expectations. I guess, though, what happens if somebody puts in a type here that collides with it can what? Adornments. That could break. The event class that gets generated, that could break. If it's just at the end of the file, not nested. Okay, Mitch, I'm sorry. You may want to post this in the Rocks Discord server because so you can be a little bit more wordy. I'm missing what you're saying here with it being file scoped. I mean, I know what a file scoped class is. I just don't understand how that would help here. So yeah, please do that because I'm missing the point. The verify overload, I don't know what we would do there. If we needed to put a verify method, that could get off. See, this could be really, really bad. This is the one thing that, because we would put a type in between all this stuff, it got us away from naming collisions. Now we have to be really, really conscious of naming collisions. And with the verify overload, there's no way to get around it because you have to override. Yeah, there's so much that this could break. So this is a bit of a stumbling block. I don't think, I mean, it's something we can overcome, but it does suddenly make things harder to work with. Is there a test I can use as a baseline to show this on? Offhand, I don't know. I really don't know. So they're not insurmountable. We have a thing called the variable naming context. We can use that to say, here are all the unique names for the members on the mock type. We know what those are. And then we just have to say, every time I'm expecting to call service property expectations, I actually admit this. Every time I want to call dormants for handlers, I have to call this. Because everything needs to have a unique name. Everything. These can't, though. These have to be the names of the things that are there. And this is what really concerns me. All of it is not insurmountable, just annoying. I'm going to blame you, Mitch, for all this, because you're the one that forced me to do this. It's this one, because this reverses it. We can't rename this. We have to use verify here. And so if we needed to generate a method that was called verify and had no arguments, we'd have to call that like verify2, and that's ugly as hell. Can I copy paste this class into this? Yeah, I will try to remember to do that. Okay. Again, this is leaving me uneasy. I'm going to just have to leave it at that because I got to get to my day job. So I think this will be an easy solve. I'm not convinced, but I'm willing to listen. So I could put this... I'll figure that out later. Okay. I got to end the stream because I need to get to work. So, but yeah, check for that, Mitch, there. The only thing is that the code might be too long to actually fit in a Discord. So, I might have to message you it or something. I don't know, but I'll get it to you. All right. I have to think about this. What is the right way to handle this? On an expectations type, I mean, here's the thing though. We have all these things that are on the expectation itself. So I'm starting to get really, really worried here that we painted ourselves into a corner that we can't get out of. At least easily. Because what would happen if, on the expectations type 2, what would happen if there was a property that they had called was exception thrown? That breaks too. I think this is a big, the more I'm thinking about this, I don't want to become too hyperbole with this, but this is becoming a big problem. which is unfortunate because I really like what we're doing here. But with all the collisions of names that could happen, and we just saw one that happens, and again, it means it's going to happen. We're going to run into these at some point with other things. It's going to happen. So anyway, I need to get to work. So I want to thank everybody who's been watching either now or in the future. If you have not subscribed to the channel just yet, please do so. I would greatly appreciate it, as I'm trying to get to 5,000 subscribers as my next goal. Any new subscription helps, so thank you in advance. If you've already subscribed, I appreciate you. I will be doing a Silksong stream tomorrow afternoon Central Time. I don't know the next time I'm going to do a coding stream. So yeah, we'll see when I do this the next time. But with that, I'm going to end this stream. Thank you all for watching. Take care, and I hope to see you in the future.